Hey everybody, welcome to Musicians Musings. This is the place where we learn, reflect, grow, and just have fun as musicians in ministry. I'm Zeke.
And I'm Zay.
Let's get into today's podcast, The Art of Not Overplaying.
Maybe there was one time you just played too much and realized later, maybe it was at an altar call, maybe it was in the middle of a worship service, that it didn't actually serve the music. That's what overplaying is. So overplaying is either playing too many notes or fills that don't actually serve the song. Zeke, was there ever a time where you remember overplaying?
Yes, the first 2 years of playing guitar every service.
Yeah. I know on drums especially, people often think of drums and guitar when overplaying.
So the reason why people don't really think of guitar is because it's really easy to overplay in a smaller setting. So for us, when I started playing, it was just drums, guitar, starting, and piano.
Yeah. For a while, it was just piano and drums. So as a drummer, I had to fill in a ton of space, especially with no loops.
So when I
loops
started,
now, which helps.
When I started, I had so much room that I could fill in, and I thought I had to fill in it all.
Yeah.
So I never really stepped back from any part of the song.
Yeah.
But eventually I realized, hey, essentially, less is more.
Yeah. Which we're going to get into that a little bit later. If you were to look up overplay as a verb in Merriam-Webster's dictionary, there's two definitions that come up, actually three, but the third one is about golf, and it doesn't apply to us, but we'll read it for fun. So the first one is to present as a dramatic role extravagantly, to exaggerate. B, to place too much emphasis on. The second definition, to rely too much on the strength of, usually used in the phrase overplay one's hand. You think of a card game, if you're doing too fast or going too much out on the card game. And Zeke's laughing at me behind the mic because I don't know that much about cards.
At all.
Yeah, nothing at all. The third definition, to strike a golf ball beyond, and then in parentheses, a putting green. So I guess you just hit the ball too hard and it goes beyond. I'm not much of a sports guy, so I don't know. So that's what overplaying is according to Merriam-Webster's dictionary. Do you have maybe a slightly different definition, Bub?
No. I always look in the Merriam-Webster dictionary, so that's literally what I had.
Oh, okay. So have you guys out there ever caught yourself ever overplaying? Why do we feel like we have to fill in every little space?
Or maybe you are a music leader and you've heard somebody else overplaying, but you don't quite know how to help them get over overplaying.
Or maybe you know something's off, you don't realize it's overplaying. Maybe that's the case. I want to quickly touch on this, not too much, but overplaying doesn't just apply to music like most people think. Overplaying can apply to prayer, to preaching, teaching. There's several different applications to overplaying and tips on how to avoid it. You think of teaching or preaching, or if you're ever in a debate, I guess this could apply too, but supplying too much information at once, that would be huge. If you overwhelm the listener or the person you're speaking with too much information, they're not going to listen to you anymore. You overcomplicate the message or talk too much without engaging. Both 2 points there. Both are really good.
Yeah.
Overcomplicate the message using excessive big terms like theological or long-winded explanations.
Or maybe they're not, quote, big terms, but they're terms that those people that you're talking to really wouldn't understand.
Yeah, know your audience, for one.
Yeah, absolutely. For speaking, overplaying. For speaking, overplaying, over talking, whatever.
Talking too much without engaging. Not allowing room for reflection, discussion, or in some cases, God to move. Like if you're in a Bible study.
Yeah. A lot of people look up to Jonathan Edwards, but he preached with no emotion which I think his reading his messages, they were great. But if he would have had emotion, they'd have been so much better.
Yeah. Hindsight's 2020.
Right.
Worship leading and prayer. You can overfill the moment. Don't use flowery language, like all the fluffed up language. Over singing. If you sing too many runs or add too many spontaneous moments, you make worship more about the vocal performance than leading people. That could be you pray too long, you force moments instead of just flowing.
Mm-hmm.
And some of these we're just kind of touching on. We're not going into too much information here.
Right. I think that's a big one. I think a lot of times with
Which one? I'm sorry.
Forcing moments.
Okay.
Like when a lot of people are leading worship, especially like when they're just starting to lead worship, they feel kind of awkward. So they feel like they just have to rush through everything, which I know it's hard, but honestly, it's not the best way to do it.
And there's moments. So like last Sunday night, we played, it was a fairly fast set. Yeah. And after we played The Church is Alive, before we got into that last song, or maybe it was the last song, the church kind of blew up and we just played for so it was The Church is Alive to Going to Under Our Feet.
Yeah.
And the church just blew up. We played for like an hour at least.
On top of what we had already done.
Yeah. And so like it got to the point where the piano player got off and was praying and worshiping. And so it was me on drums, Zeke on guitar.
And a lot of times that does happen in our church.
Yeah.
Like one person will go.
And worship.
One or two people will go. And typically I stay on my guitar because you can't really play a whole lot of high stuff with the bass, obviously. We don't really have an aux player right now. So I stay up because I can play kind of all the mid and high stuff.
Yeah. But so we're playing and we kind of make the dynamics at that point. We're kind of filling in a little bit more spots. If Zeke was doing a guitar run, like solo type deal, I would kind of back off and just kind of like keep the groove. And there was times where the opposite happened, where I would start leading from the drums.
Mm-hmm.
And we'd go back and forth, and that creates a special dynamic in that worship flow. And ultimately, like, as musicians, we're looking at each other, we're communicating musically.
And honestly, as a musician, it is really hard to not force something.
And that's where I was going.
If we know a shout and the church is blowing up.
Especially if it was a fast song anyway.
But maybe it needs to be a more worshipful moment.
Yeah, and that's where I was kind of going. There's times for that where the church will blow up, you're going to continue music or whatever, but there's also times, like, you hear a lot of times, like, it'll be like a prayer moment. It'll blow out.
Yeah.
And the piano player will start playing something.
It won't blow up. It'll blow out.
Yeah. And the piano player will start playing something. There's times for that, but there's also times to where you can't have anything because if something is said too loudly or like there's too many sounds or something, God can't move the way he needs to. So yeah, definitely be sensitive. Leadership and service. This hit me hard when we were researching this. Doing too much instead of delegating.
Yeah.
That hits me hard. Not allowing others to step up. You overplan, micromanage. You don't trust your team necessarily. A leader who does everything can burn out and also prevent others from growing in their gifts.
Which, if you're on the platform, you are a leader. That doesn't mean you have to be over a certain area. If you're on the platform, you are a leader.
Yeah. And like, we're both heavily involved in like the cadet ministry. So we help all the ministry, whether that's on the platform or like back in the sound booth. If they need something, we do our best to get it. And there's times to where I'll tell the team like, hey, we're going to do this. And I don't delegate. I'll just end up doing it myself, which is not good for me or the team.
Nope.
So like, I know I can do better. So that does hit me hard. Outreach and ministry work. focusing on activity over impact. You overload events without purpose, overwhelm people with commitments,
Yeah.
focusing on works rather than faith.
Yeah, that over delegating is too hard. That's pretty hard too.
Yeah.
Because once you get in the habit of delegating,
Oh, it's
you
so
can kind of
easy.
get lazy.
Yeah. And that kind of goes back to flowing with God right
Yeah.
there. Here's a big one. Personal spiritual life. You try too hard instead of resting in God. Again, overloading yourself this time with spiritual disciplines, which is possible. You read too much, you pray too much. I don't know if you can really pray too much personally.
Honestly, I don't know if you can.
I don't know if you can either. But fasting or praying excessively without truly connecting with God,
That can be
that is where I think maybe the praying too much comes in if you're not connecting.
vain.
Yeah, it's just vain repetitions.
Mm-hmm.
Trying to earn God's favor through effort, work-based faith, where you feel like you're being saved through works rather than by faith. How does that tie into overplaying with music?
Which one?
All of
Personal or everything?
all of what we just talked about. Kind of a brief summary.
Basically, you got to be prayed up. You got to be in tune with God.
Yeah, you want to serve, but be excellent to make an impact. Too much can be counterproductive.
Yeah.
So the key is balance, humility, and knowing when to step up or to step back so God can move. So now let's kind of jump into the music side. And
I have like an outline that I want to run through, like more music.
Yeah, let's do it. We're going off the same set of notes here, so he's seeing what I'm seeing too. Oh, you're not?
I got my own set notes, bro.
Oh, well, he had my set of notes.
So have them. But anyways, right now I'm going to kind of focus on how to avoid overplaying. Now that we kind of got it.
Do you want to talk about maybe why people overplay first or no?
We can. I mean,
Would that, I think that would flow a little bit better.
Okay.
So just a few common reasons real quick. Lack of experience in playing with a group. Again, kind of going back to like, in our case, we only had a piano and a drummer for years. And now we're growing and we have both bass and guitar. And we're starting to get aux, keys.
Yeah.
Misunderstanding the role of someone's instrument in the mix.
Yeah, that's hard. Because like,
Yeah.
I think piano, bass, and guitar are a great example of this.
Mm-hmm.
With guitar, you're going to be fighting a double-sided war because your singers are going to be in the same space you are, but mid to higher piano is also going to be in the same space.
And there's times where you all have to play close to the same region.
Yeah, and if you're all too close and it kind of sounds muddy, like you just jump up an octave. That's not hard on guitar.
Or you maybe back off, and depending on the case.
Right. Yeah. But for like the bass side of things, the pianist can't play low anymore.
No.
They got to move it up to play a higher octave or just a single note.
Yeah, and maybe that's not doing an octave. Like in their left hand, maybe that's, I'm only going to play like the brute, close to middle of the keyboard.
Right. Like just the one going by numbers.
Yeah, 1 and a 5 maybe.
Mm-hmm. I feel like that's a great example of in your space, and that can turn into overplaying.
Yeah. A couple other reasons real quick before we start running through Zeke's outline. Insecurity. You feel the need to prove your skill, which I think drummers, especially, I know some of the other members in the band can, but I think drums would be the particular back part of that. But you also get caught up in personal expression rather than serving the song. So that's huge right there. All right. What were some of your points on that outline?
All right. So I'm going to run through like a topic sentence, I would say. And then I'm going to go into each point just a little bit.
And I'll jump in where I can.
Yeah. So overplaying is very common in music, but 8 things you can do to help avoid overplaying is listen intently, beforehand, before the song, and during the song.
If you're in a practice, either record yourself or after practice, ask a fellow musician, how'd I do? Was I stepping on your toes a little bit?
Right.
So that could be helpful too.
Yeah. Number 2, Zay's going to think this is kind of funny, but play in the pocket. You need to play in that pocket, and that'll help you avoid that overplaying. This one's hard. Practice restraint.
For sure.
Consider the song's context. So maybe, sure, what we play in church is either CCM or like mid-gospel or like black gospel. But consider how you should be playing.
And leave room for dynamics. That kind of flows right in there.
Yeah.
You can't just... If you were talking to somebody, you're not going to shout the entire time.
Right.
If you did, they're not going to listen to you. If you whisper the entire time, they're not going to listen to you. They can't hear you. They're going to tune you out. So you have to find that perfect balance.
Right. Number 5. Either record yourself, or I would say another better way, is to have somebody else record you without you knowing.
Yeah.
And then after they record it, they send it to you. Because then you're going to be playing.
Just have them like randomly record you. Don't be like, hey, I want you to record me tonight. Because if you do that, you're going to know, and you're going to back off. You're purposely going to back off. So just be like, hey, just randomly record me. I don't want to know you're recording. Yeah. They might do it that night, and they might wait a week and a half before they record.
Yeah. I'm going to kind of explain this one more later, but focus on the groove. And I'll explain that one more later. Simplify your approach. You don't need to be pulling out every lick you know on everything.
Acronym kiss it. Keep it simple, stupid.
Yeah. Simplify. Be simple. Simple is better. And then number 8, always practice with a metronome. I know this is kind of off topic.
Or maybe a loop.
But
we play with loops.
Because if you're overplaying, but not like any of the other ways, you're just overplaying timing. You're playing too much for that time. Practicing with the metronome can help that. But I'm going to go back to the very first point, which was listening intently to the song and out of service and during service. My personal, I think we talked about this in the intro, but my personal routine to get ready for a song is to listen to the set 1,000,000 times.
I think we might have done it in Beyond Sunday one.
Yeah. So, that really helps me. It helps me, because I listen to it while I do other things. So it's kind of like getting into my subconscious. So I listen to that all the time. And then during service, I have personally had myself all the way up, because if I make a mistake or I start overplaying, I'm going to hear it right away, like that.
And by all the way up, you mean in your IEM box, your personal in-ears.
But I can still hear everything. It's not like...
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify that. I knew what you were talking about. Some of them might thought of your volume on your guitar.
Yeah. You should try, when you're listening to yourself, try to cut through the mix so you can be heard, but not overpowering. Because you can overpower and not be overplaying, but overpowering is still wrong.
Yeah. Yeah, so...
It's like the dynamics thing.
Let's give some practical tips to avoid overplaying. And you kind of went over some of my points here. Actively listen. Pay attention to not only what's going on, but what other people are playing. Everybody plays by their ear to some extent.
Right.
You may not be able to pick out notes, but you can pick out, the bass is really grooving right now.
Mm-hmm.
So how can I compliment him? Or, no matter if you're on drums or guitar or whatnot, you can compliment that somehow.
Tip 2.
So in rehearsals, focus on what's missing instead of just what you can add.
Yeah. Tip number 2, play in the pocket. I think that is really, really heavily said to drummers, but it doesn't just apply to them.
Pocket is defined as doing the same thing, the same run, the same set of notes, chord pattern over and over and over.
And that doesn't mean, it means simple. Doing simple runs
Generally,
over and over
yeah.
again. Don't do like really complex stuff because that's overplaying.
Yeah, and leading into that, know your role. Understand if you're going to lead, support, or you're just filling space. If you're on drums and you're playing a drumless song, don't play much, if at all.
Yeah.
There's going to be times where you literally just have your hands up and worship.
Right.
And I want to, and for you drummers out there, I'm a drummer. I'm going to say this. If you're like at that point in the song, you're not playing anything, put both your sticks in one hand or on the snare or floor tom, wherever you want, lift up one or both of your hands and at least pray. At least pray during that part. Because people are watching you, whether you realize it or not. You're on the platform. They're watching you and looking to you. You're leading worship. And that's why, like, faster songs, if you're not playing, whether guitar or piano, they want, like, worship leaders want you to clap your hands at the least. Same idea. I think oftentimes drummers try to get away from that just because, I have to use all four of my appendages.
Yeah.
So just kind of going over that. But simplify your part.
Absolutely.
Play what fits rather than what's most impressive. Leave room for dynamics. Don't play full all the time or too quiet all the time.
Dynamics is another big thing.
Yeah.
Because so generally, when you're in the intro, that'll kind of be mid
to low.
You drop to the verse, and verse is like lowest dynamics ever.
Chorus can vary. Sometimes it's the same as the verse. Sometimes it's up a little bit more. But very rarely is it like full on the chorus.
Typically, you build a little bit to the chorus.
Verse 2 is a little bit higher, and then it goes back to a chorus or two.
Chorus is going to be built.
They're about. High. I'm saying those choruses right after that verse 2 is going to be about mid. You're on like
50%.
Yeah, you're level 2 or 3, and then you go into the bridge.
The bridge is going to be the dynamically highest part, unless there's a vamp.
Yeah, generally speaking, the bridge is where like your message is of the song you're trying to communicate.
Yeah. So
there's that. So what we covered today is overplaying, which means playing too much. You're competing or showing off to your other musicians, singers, whatever the case might be. Restraint, space, and dynamics make the music better. Sometimes empty space is best. Playing skillfully means playing with purpose, not just ability. We kind of went over that a little bit there. Worship music is about glorifying God, not yourself, as like the key to wrap all of that up.
Oh, I forgot to come back to focus on the groove.
Do you want to cover that real quick?
Yeah, I'll cover that real quick.
I think we're about 25 minutes.
So when I say focus on the groove, that kind of sounds like you're thumping. Not necessarily. When I say that, I mean try to have it steady. You don't.
That kind of goes to playing in the pocket, I think, is if I'm understanding where you're going.
Yeah, you want it to have a good rhythm.
Lock in with your other band.
Yeah,
that's kind of what he's saying.
Dynamics.
Yeah,
if you lock in, you're going to overplay less.
Yeah. So challenge for all of you musicians or singers this week, whether it's your personal practice time, a rehearsal time with your band, record yourself or ask a bandmate for feedback. If you're a singer, ask some of the musicians for feedback on how you're doing. Are you overplaying? Are you doing too much? Do you need to do more, maybe? So that's the challenge for you guys this week. And then we want to hear your guys' experiences. So in the comments, first of all, 2 things for you. We want to have you guys share your experience with overplaying, and then comment, review other suggestions for some topics you want to cover. I know in the next few weeks, we're gonna try to have a special guest come on, and we're gonna talk about intentionally playing.
We're not gonna drop any names yet.
Not yet, but it's gonna be fun. Intentionally playing, knowing your role is gonna be one of those. I'm hoping that our friend will want to do a couple more, maybe like an interview, and maybe possibly a 3rd episode of the difference between a conference musician versus just a regular musician.
That's a good subject.
And by regular, I mean somebody who normally plays on a Sunday or midweek. So just kind of giving you a little teaser.
Yeah. We
But
want to hear your comments. We want to hear
comment
your
below.
suggestions, everything.
Yeah, comment below. Give us a rating. We love seeing those. And then join us next week as we talk about burnout. What is burnout? How can we avoid it?